So I'm going to open up the ABR for today, Tuesday, February 19th. Can I have a roll call? Here.
Vice Chair Review.
He's coming in the door.
Scott Hopkins.
Here.
Gary Moselle.
Here.
Stephanie Poole. Here. And Howard.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the meeting with item A, public comment. Anybody wishing to address the board for an item that is not on today's agenda? Seeing no one, I'll close that and move on to item B, which is the approval of the minutes, which I don't believe were available, the February 4th meeting. So we will table that for 2 weeks. Moving on to item C of the agenda, which is the consent calendar for February 11th. Do I have someone who wants to first and second that, the minutes for February 11th?
So moved.
Was that a first? And second by?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Consent calendar for February 11th. We had item A, 3891 State Street. Got a final approval with conditions. Item B, 824 Reddick Street. Got a final approval as submitted of the landscaping. Item C, 1013 Bath Street. Got final approval with conditions. Item D, 121 Gray Avenue. Got project design approval and final approval with conditions. Item E, 418 Santa Fe Place. Got project design approval and final approval as submitted. Item F, 521 North La Cumbre Road. Got project design approval and final approval of the project, and was continued 1 week for final approval of window details and landscaping details. Consent on February 11th was reviewed by Kurt Gradine.
Great. Are there any comments or questions about the agenda? About the minutes, I'm sorry. If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to the consent calendar for today, which is February 19th. Do I have a first and a second? First by Kurt, second by
Second.
Stephanie.
Okay, consent calendar today, we had item A, 811 San Pasqual Street. Got project design approval and final approval with conditions. Item B, 521 North La Cumbre Road. Final approval as submitted of those window and landscaping details. Item C, 1080 Coast Village Road. Let's see. That was approved with conditions, with a condition just to do minimal exploratory demolition. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, limiting the amount of exploratory demolition beyond what the applicant was proposing. So that was the final approval with condition. Item D, 1198 Coast Village Road, was review after final approved as submitted. And consent today was reviewed by Kurt Gradine.
Great. Any other discussion for the consent? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item D, which is announcements, requests by applicants for continuance and withdrawals.
Last time we announced that we did receive an appeal for the approval of 1911 Chino Street. Council set a date, so that appeal hearing date would be March 19th at a 6 o'clock meeting, evening meeting.
March 19th?
Yep. So we'll need somebody from the ABR. It was a split vote, so we should probably have somebody representing both sides of that vote.
I believe, Kurt, you were the maker of the motion.
Yeah, I don't know if I can make that meeting. I'll have to check, but I'd be happy to if I don't have conflicting appointments.
Okay.
If you can't make it, can you tell us or tell the person who seconded the motion, see if they can make it?
Okay.
Okay.
And I think I will attend as the opposing side.
That's perfect. That's fine.
Okay. And Jaime has some announcements too.
Chair, I just wanted to update the board. Last week at City Council, Council did adopt new advisory board design guidelines. and two changes that are specific in those guidelines deal with design review bodies. One is that the council did enact more conflict of interest training. There's going to be a requirement, even though you're not compensated at the moment, to take this training. They mentioned that they will be offering training conducted by city staff as an option rather than get on the computer. The computer training, I think, the modules are kind of lengthy, but that would be, I think, once every 2 years, that would be a requirement to take that training. They also included some additional sole proprietor exception language that is going to be required to be announced prior to board members who serve on the body presenting their own projects. So that's going to be a new requirement. In order to enact that, we also are going to change our agendas to include that exemption. So it allows the public to also be aware that this is possible, that in fact you can make a presentation before your own board. So that's coming. They'll be distributed, I think, in the near future. Probably the next meeting you'll have copies yourself. And one of the additional requirements will be that you have to indicate and sign that you've read these guidelines, that you, in fact, are understanding what they consist of and are in agreement with city's policies with respect to that. And then the last item, what we did, we're at City Council last week to award the joint ABR HLC Design Awards, and I'd like to thank Ms. Poole, Mr. Grady for helping out for that. I think it was fairly successful. And because we hadn't awarded the awards in about 6-7 years, I think there's some other nominations out there I think that we're going to come back fairly quickly on. And I'll be seeking your assistance again and try to get that before City Council. Maybe by the end of this year we'll have some more meetings and award them in 2014. So that's the plan.
Great.
One question, Jaime.
Yes.
A while back, there was an email, I believe came from your office, from your desk, asking board members, along with council and planning commission members, to do the online state-required training for conflict of interest.
Right.
And some of us completed that at that time. Is that going to be considered fulfillment of that requirement or not?
I'll check in with the city clerk's office today. I believe they're trying to get that accomplished every 2 years. So if you've done it within the last 2 years, I think it would qualify. So
Okay.
you'll be hearing some more regarding that training and who hasn't qualified
All
to
right,
take it.
thanks.
Moving on, if there's no other announcements, moving on to item E, which is the subcommittee appointments, subcommittee appointments. Do you have a printout that you gave to us a long time ago? I know this was emailed to everybody, and if people have expressed an interest. For ABR consent, we talked about having both Kirk and Stephanie rotate in 3-month increments, and you were fine because we talked on the phone about that?
Right. And Kirk mentioned him staying on for another 3 months after and on to the second half of the year. I don't know if that's what you intended, Kirk? Is that what you,
Well,
or
what
do you
I-
still want to do it that way, or
But
you want to
the
go back?
suggestion I made to Stephanie is that I would do the first 6, and then we would change every 3, as is the standard procedure, because just because Stephanie was new to the board, and to give her a chance to experience the consent calendar with me prior to taking it on herself, because my own experiences that it can be challenging, and I just offered that to her as an option, and she accepted it. So.
Not a problem, as long as staff is up to date on it.
Yeah, and I anticipate having more time to come in and help him with that in the spring this year.
Good. So that takes care of ABR consent. ABR consent landscape review, staff is addressing that. Am I correct? So moving on to the list, we have the sign committee, and the sign committee is Howard and Gary, and that's working out well. Tag team. So moving on to the standing subcommittees, we have the Highway 101 Joint Subcommittee, which is completely blank at this point. The previous people are now no longer on ABR. Does someone have an interest in following that?
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
I have one more year left, so I don't want to get too embroiled in it, but I could. But I would say someone who's going to be here for a while, it's a good place to plant yourself for the next 3 years in case there's more work happening. I don't mind being on it because I was on the landscaping portion of it for a while. But if someone else would like to volunteer, they can follow it for the next couple of years. Is that something, Scott, that you can...
I was interested in joining Gary on the architectural details.
Well, we can put you on both of those.
You know, it really ought to be a landscape person, don't you think?
Well, we don't have one right now, so how well are you with green thumbs?
It's not my area of expertise, put it that way.
All right, let's leave it blank then. We'll just put myself down for one person for 101.
That might involve other improvements other than just landscaping. There are some walls and site work that
I'll be the alternate.
Okay. Someone over here was going to say something?
I was going to say, is there a current project that's coming up on the 101?
There is a current project being considered. It's a high occupancy vehicle improvement project that would involve some realignments.
Moving on to the next one. If that's done, we'll go on to the visual arts in public places. I'm on that committee and Gary as well. Both Gary and I are cycling off ABR this year, so we'll need 2 new people next year. So just file that away in the back of your head, the people that are going to be around. Are you okay being on it again a little longer?
Yeah, as alternate, sure.
As alternate? Okay.
Yeah.
Lower Mission Creek design. Gary, that's you and somebody else? Does anyone have an interest?
I would be interested in that.
Okay, Howard, thank you. I'll put you down as the alternate. Architectural details.
Yes, please.
You spoke it fast. Scott is there. As the
Well, he
alternate.
can take it. We haven't really had a committee meeting on that, have we?
Well, we'll make him the main person. How about that?
There will be some this year.
Oh, will there? Great.
Make them really hard, please.
Who would like to be an alternate with that?
What?
For which now? For which?
We are on the architectural details.
You mean when Gary dies?
No. Scott's going to be the primary person.
Okay.
It's always good to have a second person to sort of bounce ideas
I'd
off.
be interested in that.
Okay, so we'll put Howard and Scott down for that.
If he cannot fulfill his architectural details committee.
All right, and then the awards, design awards subcommittee. Both Kirk and Stephanie, are you happy there, or do you want one
Sure.
of you? You both happy?
Yeah, very happy.
Okay. And then the next G microcell subcommittee. It's Gary and I. Is there anything happening with that?
Actually, that's very timely. We've had another series of applications. We have a new care Verizon's coming into the city, and there's approximately 13 locations. 2 of the locations, we have some neighbor requests to have a hearing, so we'll probably be scheduling that early March to hear at least 2 of the sites where we'd like some input from the board.
Okay. I would say Gary and I will just stay on, just for continuity's sake. Any other discussion for subcommittees? If not, then let's move on to the first item of the agenda, which is item 1, 222 North Milpa Street.
We're back.
Not a problem.
So, this is
Hi.
correct.
How are y'all?
Good, good, good.
Last review December 10th, 2013. Wouldn't that be somebody else some other time? Hanging out in the future.
I don't know what that means. I should have had that near you.
Oh, okay.
You guys good. So if I can have your name for the your name?
Yes, Jose Cervantes from Little Diversified Architects.
Great. I'm going to read through the minutes unless you want me to Or are we just going to be talking about the change?
The split tenants and the change in storefronts.
Okay.
You could mention your name as well.
Yeah.
Like to-
I'm Keith White with the Fresh Market.
Okay.
Thanks.
So the motion we had, which was from December 10th, the board appreciates the design changes made by the applicant. 2, study refinement to the cornice of the parapet cap to reduce its overall overhang. Reduce its overhang. Do you want to go over that? Let's see. How do we address that? Study refinements to the cornice at the parapet cap to reduce its overhang.
Was this
Did we make any changes to that? Did we refine that detail?
We did on the construction documents, but not on this.
Okay. Let me just go through all the minutes and then you can do a little presentation, because what we're here today is that you're not going to have 3 tenant spaces instead of 2.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So item 2 was the cornice of the parapet cap. 3 was the height of the side openings are to match or to be lowered the front of the new entry arch elements. 4 was to study the height and color of the awnings and to provide colors for the materials. 5, one board member finds that the roof over the arched entry element requires further study. 6, clarify and provide landscape details of the existing and proposed plantings for the areas shown in the solid green on the plans along Milpas and Montecito Street. So do you want to, how do you want to do your presentation?
I'll let Keith take the mic on this one, just to give you a simple overview of what we're actually here for. Is that we had 1 tenant space the last time, and now we split them in 2, so we now have 2 entrances. And so we changed the plan. And everything that was at the front, where we had at one point in time 1 ramp in the center, and now since we have 2 tenant spaces, we created a ramp in front of each one of them and added an extra arch, not arch, but
Actually, yeah, let me go back to this real quick. Originally, what we presented the last time we were here was very close to this, except we had 3 arches. This being the main entry for the Fresh Market. This is our secondary entrance / exit, and this was our tenant entrance exit. We're trying to keep a very similar elevation, so we kept this archway. We now have 2. We need the flexibility to have 2 tenant entry points. So these are our tenant entry points, keeping that arch. And opposition to this would be to add 3 arches, and we want to keep as close to that original elevation because we really like that elevation. We think it works well. We've already been approved for that elevation, so that's why we came back. We still have the only difference really is that we've added a parapet on these 2 sides to allow entry point here with storefront, entry point here with storefront. This archway is still at the front right here, and that's your entry point for our 2 tenant spaces.
Okay.
So the archway has a wall behind it?
The archway has a wall behind it. It's actually landscaping underneath, so we would have the same architectural detailing above, and we would have landscaping underneath.
The planters added then?
Yeah, yeah,
So this cream-colored wall that's right here is actually back at this plane?
correct.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's all. So you're right now doing construction drawings. You were given project design approval. Were you to return back to full board or consent? Do you recall? It's not noted here, so I'm going to say it was full board for your construction details.
It was my understanding that we were coming back today. We would present, hopefully get approval for the 2 the additional entrances.
Okay.
And then we would come back a final time for full design.
Yeah.
Okay. It's returned back to full board. Okay, so then any of the items that are on the minutes that you haven't addressed, we'll just roll it over to the next time you come.
Now, would that be a full, and,
Full board is everybody like today.
okay. I thought we were just going
Yeah, I thought we
with
were-
one person.
That was our understanding.
Oh, here it is. Actually, it says here, project design approval and continuance indefinite to the full board with the following comments. So, but really what we're going to give you discussion today is that the two entrance concept over here is fine, and then we'll come back with the rest of the information. Unless, have you addressed the height of the side openings and all that kind of stuff? You ready to talk about that?
We did already on the CDs, not on the.
Okay, then we'll just roll those over.
Okay.
So we'll just talk about these two items and then move on to the next meeting.
And then for the next meeting, and if we need to just talk to Tony about this, we can. But I guess we just need to find out if it's contained in our construction drawings. Do we just pull those sheets for the presentation, or do we have to actually update a rendered elevation for that meeting?
I would believe construction drawings would be sufficient enough.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that, do you have anything else for your presentation?
No, I did bring a sheet. They're not completely finished yet, but it does cut a section through here showing that this is closed off on the, gives you that condition of how it's closed off on the archway entrances. One comment, how are we going to close off, the return here?
I would say let's just address it
Okay.
at the next meeting. So with that, I'll open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to the board on this item? If not, I'll return it back to the board for questions of the applicant.
Quick question.
Scott?
Can you walk behind the landscape between the two tenants back here?
Yes.
Okay.
Question?
Yeah.
The elevation shows a shadow line here, but it looks like this is all one surface. Is this all at the surface of the columns, or am I not reading that correctly?
It is, it's all, that's a one plane.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not like this condition here.
Okay, good eye. Questions?
That was my same question. I was looking at the floor plan, and it didn't seem to correspond with the elevations. It appears that it's one plane on the floor plan.
Another question, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So this obviously returns back to the building right at the column line, which is that, and then this is also a corner of the building, is what we're seeing. That line right there is also a corner.
That's correct. That's an existing stucco band.
And then, but it looks like the parapet height is slightly higher than this. Is that your intention? Or?
There's a ceramic tile, existing ceramic tile band running above that stucco band, and then a cap,
Okay.
parapet metal cap painted.
I have one question. We had one board member.
The same plane.
Are we
Sorry, I
good?
was just
If
going
we-
to add to that real quick.
Finish that.
This is that loading dock area in the back. That's that existing corner. And so that kind of shows how we're stopping a little short of that wall right there. Column sits right here. Then the landscape wraps it, aligning with that edge of the building.
I see that. Yeah. And this is horizontal metal? Is that what that is?
Split face.
Split
CMU.
face block.
All right, and you're plastering over it. Is that what that's showing? No.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, no, we're not. We're just being painted. That's just to show the paint.
Okay.
Yeah. This is being plastered.
So this would also be split face along here.
That's correct. Existing.
To clarify, the elevation is correct or the plan is correct in your final intent?
The
The plan is correct.
Plan is correct. okay.
Yeah, it's just this pop out. That looks like a pop out. It's not actually popped out. It's all
Okay.
on one plane.
So there's no line edge here.
Yeah.
Correct. There'll be a line there just as a score line.
line
Controlled
Plaster.
Yeah, control joint.
Oh, it's a control joint.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
But so visually, you can't see a control joint from a distance.
not very much. Yeah.
Very single line.
I had a question. On the minutes, it said one board member finds the roof over the entry arch element requires further study. Did you make any changes to this arch? Was this the arch that was made reference to?
It wasn't. We did not.
Okay.
It was this roof element, not the arch itself, that I was asking for some study. But
Okay. I just wanted to see
That
if,
was the only one.
because I don't remember exactly what it was, but this is where you would like to take the project.
Yeah, we feel just in looking at that whole composition, just how the signage fits in the field, how the arch works, we really feel that this is kind of our best design. We feel very comfortable and are happy with that design.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, I'll go into comments. And and then when we formulate a motion, I'll just carry over some of the comments from the previous minutes. And really all we're talking about is just how they've changed this front facade to incorporate basically 3 tenants from 2 tenants.
Two tenants.
2 new tenants.
Yeah.
2 tenants here, and then this is 1, so
yes.
there's a total of 3 for that
Total
building.
3.
Mr. Chair, I'll start if no one else is
Okay,
ready
go
to
for it.
start. Come on.
Is it on?
So as my questions were indicating, I'm concerned about the fact that it is simply a flush parapet and column arrangement, and that I feel like, this additional work that you're doing is an opportunity not only to provide more articulation to the building like you've done with this, but also to vary the heights as you've done here. And I'm not suggesting that you push these parapets up to match this, but I think there's room for some different arrangement in heights on the parapets for this section itself. For example, this one could be a little higher. Maybe this goes up just a little bit more. Maybe this comes down and this plaster meets the existing plaster height around the side. I think there's a number of options that could be considered there. So I think that's to get some kind of more differentiation in terms of the overall surface and column arrangement.
This forward, so
That's
how it's
yeah,
showing, would
yep.
that be something?
Yeah. Yep.
I guess there's
'Cause I don't think that would really affect our plan if we were to do that.
That's just my view. But also, I'd like to see the side view in order to understand exactly what's going on and how this connects with the existing building. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Comments, Stephanie?
I'll jump right in and say that I somewhat agree with Kirk in that I do believe that there should be a change in plane at that location, and I think it's the solution you've come up with is pretty strong. However, I wouldn't encourage you to go any higher with these elements, but some sort of different treatment of them to perhaps this middle one to differentiate it and also pull it forward would be helpful to alleviate that linearity. And I'm a little concerned about the fact that you're not treating the split face block there, or the texture of the face of the building. And I would encourage you to study that stuccoing, that texture. But-
This block here in
Yeah.
the front, in this corner, not the loading dock back here, which is this block. From here, we're
Oh, you are?
Yes, we're making a smooth stucco.
So really from this point over
All
to
the way
this
to that.
corner?
But not on this side, this
No,
elevation?
because that's a truck.
Okay.
Okay, and what about the side that faces Montecito Street?
There's trees all around there. We're just going to paint it.
Again, you know, how you turn that corner and treat that corner will make a difference. You know, if you stucco it here and then stop, and then it's just split face effect, you know, that's going to be a little awkward. So I'm just saying, come up with some solution for the next time you come before this board.
Okay, that's a great comment. Discussion from anybody else?
I missed the original review, so I'm abstaining from comments.
Okay. Kip?
Let's say now, I still can make comments, right? And should I limit to the front, the two elements, or should I? How?
They're in the process of doing construction drawings for this design, so if you have anything that they can, to take this design further while they're doing the construction drawings, that's one comment. The other comment is what's in front of us today, which is these two things. But they're not going to alter this design significantly, but as they refine it, you can make some comments.
The project received conceptual approval? Or
Project design approval, yes.
Which one, conceptual approval?
The next one.
Preliminary.
It did receive preliminary.
It did.
So this is final.
No, this isn't final. This is in progress because they made a change to it because they now have these two entrances.
Right. But the comment from the last meeting was to address the front.
And they basically said that they're happy with the way this solution was. They studied it and they're going to stay with what they initially had.
Yeah, so I say going forward, personally, I have a little problem with the elevation. I think it's a little fragmented in my opinion. I think that I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to create a new entrance for fresh
Is
market.
your microphone on your shirt?
It's dropping down again as usual. So, for example, let's talk about the front a little bit because I know it was in the last comment from the last board meeting. Somehow I feel that this arch here is in conflict with the opening behind it, and even might look better without the arches in front. And I think we probably have a much stronger entrance, at least in my opinion, as the main entrance to a fresh market. So when you look at this, it seems like you have two elements here. And
We can't really change too much of that design.
right. Yeah, I mean, but can we comment to the front element? Because that was one of the comments from the last board meeting.
We asked them to study the roof.
But they haven't done anything to it.
They chose not to.
Yeah, so I think that's my comment on that. I still feel that we need some work on this.
Okay.
And you mentioned that I feel that there's a lot of options on how you can make this a little stronger. Just my opinion. As you come in, because now you have 1, 2, 3, and then you block this off. You come in here. To me, when you come in, this seems to be pretty strong now because at least it's balanced left and right, and this becomes secondary. Then you have different height here, and then you have 3 arches. Then this one had low overhang. This low piece. The distance between the top of the arch and the top of the parapet is less than V2 right here. So I just feel there's some conflicting design directions in terms of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of trying to create an entrance for fresh market. And so that's I just feel that I'm sure this would be a big improvement because I've seen this building year after year and it's always been an eyesore down to it. But I feel that maybe just a little thing you can really help this a little bit.
Okay.
I would like to add one thing, that I do appreciate the applicant adding landscaping where possible, and that you did as we had asked you previously.
Great.
With that new planter. That's it.
So if not, Gary?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, a few comments. One is that I appreciate it's been a long road and we've worked very hard to get it where it is today. And I'm okay with the main entrance. I think it's been a huge step from what you first started out with. But about the new...
We're all learning today.
That's it's on. So, what I would what I was thinking is, I'm finding the center of between the two buildings. It seems to me that there's a bit of a conflict there. It seems to me that there's a bit of a conflict there, and I think that the project would be better, seeing how it's the same plane, would be better with one big plane and perhaps larger columns or something, so it looks a little bit more like an arcade. I think the division of it seems to not work that well for me with the center arch, but the two main. No, oh, I'm
You're
sorry.
talking this one?
Let me get up there and explain it. I think that this element right here, which kind of looks like an entry, which is the entry elements, and all of it is decorative, and I think these columns are a little small width-wise for this to be the same plane, and I think that it would be better if we just utilize the canopies to do it and not have this thing in the center right here, and made these columns a little bit more like it's going to carry that load. That way, I think that the options are better, and I think that it's not in conflict with this. So it still looks to me like there's 3 units, and they're splitting it, so it looks odd to me. And I agree with Stephanie that this trash enclosure should be plastered, as well as this wall and part of the turnaround, at least to the trash enclosure, should be plastered.
Before you talk, did you understand what Kirk was saying about having, first of all, varying this plane by pulling this up forward, which they agreed to, and the second thing Kirk was saying is perhaps changing this parapet or changing something here to give a little bit more
To give a little variation.
so that
I think that would also be a solution, but as it stands right now with these smaller columns on the end and the domination in the center and it being all the same plane, I'm having a lot of problems with it as it is. So
they won't be coming back with it the way it is.
As a whole, I think it needs study, not just this portion of it.
Okay. Howard, did you have anything else to add?
I pretty much agree with what I've heard, and also I have not seen this project before, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All right. So, Tony, did you have something for us?
Which
Is that the previous solution?
Oh, well, this was. Well, I guess.
You want to muddy?
No,
don't
because
muddy
this
the
is
water.
is not what it's going
So, Keith, do you want to add anything before we do a motion?
Just real quickly, I understand what you're asking for about termination of the stucco. The one thing I did want to point out that this is approximately 90 feet back from this face. So I understand what you're saying, but my concern is, we would be plastering a facade that is really extremely far back from the front entrance. So it would be, from our perspective, a high cost for something that would be not a huge architectural effect, I feel like, because it's so far behind. The suggestion, I think we need to refine this plan so that it matches, and when we come back for our final presentation, it will be changed for that, and we'll look at further development of that as well. So.
And these columns here too, they could be beefed up to be as wide as they used to. They do look a little thin.
Right. That was actually a good eyesight catch.
Mm-hmm.
So, if someone wants to make a motion, or I'll float a motion and see if everyone's in agreement. The notes that I took was for the applicant to study the new entrance elements and to vary the parapet heights and or the facade treatment. So there's both this direction as well as this up and down stuff. Mm-hmm. And we're not giving you 100% direction, but just in the sense that you need to do something here because what you have in front of us isn't working. We have one solution that was mentioned, and then Gary was talking about some other options.
Okay.
Okay. The second item was to bring some additional information about the side views and how the plaster is going to be terminated as you turn the corner. So if you're going to go 1 foot, are you going to go 10 feet, or are you going to go 90 feet? And then if you want to show some photographs from a different part of the parking lot, you can sort of make your case. But right now, we just don't want a clean line or, look like, what we didn't touch. So come back with a solution. And I would say on both sides, and how the stucco over the CMU block is being terminated. And, yeah, the stucco, how it's terminating, and provide additional information about the side view. And then carrying over items 2, 3, 4, and 6 from the previous minutes, which item 2 was to study the refinement of the cornice at the parapet cap. Item 3 was to study the height of the side openings are to match or to be lower than the front of the new entrance arch elements. Item 6 is to clarify and provide landscaping details of the existing or proposed planters. So the more information you have for the plantings. Is that
I'll make that motion.
Chair.
We need a second for that motion, and then he might want to add something to it first. Someone want to second that motion?
Second.
Under discussion.
Yes.
Since we had now another board member who commented on this main entrance, I think that we should keep number 5 in as well. If they choose not to respond to that, then that becomes an item for further discussion. Because part of the reason for wanting something else to be done with the roof over this main entry was because this, as was pointed out by Tip, the height between the top of this arch and the parapet is weak in compared to what's happening here and what's happening here. So it's like you're taking the most prominent entrance and you're giving it kind of a weakness by doing that. So I think something needs to be done there. Again, there's lots of options, but I think we should keep that item in there.
And I want to comment that item a little bit too on the motion.
Okay, wait 1 sec. Why don't we just add item 5, but say 2 board members find. Or just say some board members find that the roof overhang.
I'm fine with that, keeping 5 in.
Keeping 5 in, okay?
And Chair, I know cost is a big issue, like everything we do in life. And personally, I think if you get rid of that element completely, that you have much more successful elevation. So you don't conflicting the front, the back, and try to do. I think that maybe you try too hard on that front. So just look at that and see how it looks.
Did you mention thickening up the columns?
No, but I'm hoping he'll remember. Let's add that to the motion. Okay. Item 4 would be to have the column width match throughout the front elevation on the new tenant spaces, which he's taking good notes. Any other discussions? Before we take a vote, one comment is when you come back, don't come with 100% finished construction drawings. Come back with an in progress in case there's a couple more tweaks, and then we'll have you go to consent, which is one person, which is the final version. But if you have all your engineering and everything 100% finished and we want to ask you to do some minor changes, it might be some heartache. So
Just make sure all the details that are included on the elevations are included in your set.
It'll be in the set. It may not match exactly this rendering because we're refining it in the
we
set.
won't be
The
looking.
rendering is not as critical as the CDs.
Yeah.
Will it be the next design review?
Would you like a
board
2-week
meeting?
continuance?
We want to come back to the next meeting.
Okay, we'll come back in 2 weeks.
Okay, and that'll be for full consent.
It'll be a full board with all of these other items addressed, and if you want to talk about any more discussion here and how you resolve this here, those are critical, and then the side elevations. Okay. Any other discussion? Not? I'll ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll see you in 2 weeks. Motion carries.
We have an abstain, 2 abstains.
Forgot to ask that question. 2 abstentions.
You did get a motion about wrapping around that.
Yeah, and to bring some photographic information. Hold on to that.
That'll all be in the minutes. Posted.
Yeah.
Just so we can double check.
Right.
We're going to move on to item 2, which is 2700 Morado
is an extra set also if you want to pick this. Keith?
Oh, thank you.
How do you? Maradero? Maradero. We have 3 chairs for 3 people. If you want to start while he's passing this out, introduce yourself, your names for the record, and your microphone. If you touch that oval section, now it's on. Great. And your names for the record?
Julie Mercer, and I'm Vice President of the Association.
Julie?
Dave Miller, I'm president.
Diane Hammer, treasurer.
All right, great. So what do we have here in front of us?
Well, what we have is a condo complex consisting of 10 buildings and 43 total units. We have 3 buildings that have a sandwich unit in the middle, so we have 40 exterior units with sets of trellises, which are shown in the photos. I've taken perspective photos from the side, and there should be some close-up photos of damage they're
So we're just looking for the photo of the existing condition, and then we'll look at a photo of the proposed solution.
Here's one from across the street, and here's another from a different angle, and another.
So actually, I want to keep them all so the TV camera is zooming in on it, and then I'll pass them around to people.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got it.
But we're talking about this area right here, where this trellis is. Is that what we're talking
Correct.
about? So here's another view of it. It's the trellis at the end of the rake.
Correct. This is a good photo here.
You have a good photo? Okay. So this is the current exterior condition.
Correct.
So you pass these down. If you look at them and then pass them down. And how would you like to? What's the proposed solution? You had a
Well, the
mock-up.
proposal is we have some.
The photos.
No, that's what we would propose the final look to be. What we're proposing is removing all the trellis members themselves, cutting back the 3 support beams at the end to about 8 inches from the rake, and then taking and putting this metal cap back over that exposed 8-inch top and eliminating the trellis members and the exposed beams. The letter is rather verbose, but we went through 6 years ago. We spent over $100,000 refurbishing these trellises, and we're back in the same boat again with dry rot and termite damage. And the community has voted not to spend the money to replace them all. And we gave them the option to take them all down, and the vote was essentially remove them. So
Okay.
what we're proposing is to do that on behalf of the association.
All righty. That's all from presentation. It sounds good.
Thank you.
I will open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? Staff? I do believe we did each individually receive a letter regarding this. At least I received one at my house.
I did as well.
I did.
Okay, so I've seen these photographs and I've heard about the project. So
Staff didn't see that correspondence.
Oh. Okay.
I did not bring it, but I did receive a very large package,
With some photos and
photographs and long letters.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to the board and we'll ask questions of the applicant. Anyone have questions? Just jump right in.
I have a question. Are these structural columns in these photographs, and do they remain?
Those remain.
It looks like they're removed from the photo set.
That's very true.
No,
Right over here.
they don't all have them. Only some of the units have the supporting columns, and those are where they have the eaves extend out longer than others. So it's kind of hit and miss which ones do and which ones don't. Typically, if they have 3 trellises, they'll have an exposed
So
or
where
a
they
member.
exist, they will remain.
They will remain.
Okay?
And what is the relationship once the beam is cut to where that column hits the beam? Is it right at the end? Is it held back a little bit?
The supporting beam will be back a little bit. We're going to leave 8 inches at the top of the column, support beam.
Okay, so
And then cut at an angle, 30-degree angle, and then this 4x4 that supports it will be back just a few inches back behind it.
3 or 4 inches at the most.
That's all. Yes.
Okay.
I got it. Sorry, go ahead.
Whoever wants to be next?
I have a question.
I have some questions. Are these 4x4 posts part of the original design? Or were they put in there because the ridge beams were sagging?
No. They were not put in there because the ridge beams were sagging.
So
Those
the
are
ridge
original
beams,
design.
so the ridge beams, this is a fairly deep beam, is cantilevered quite a ways out.
Yes.
And it was intended to do that without any support, or
No, those were,
I think they were original. They were original design.
Right.
It was determined which ones were so far out that they structurally needed support. On some of the units, it was determined there is not enough weight on that cantilever, and they did not need the beams.
so this is another little technical question. Does the association own these pieces of wood? Or
Yes.
in other words, the individual condominium owner does not own these?
correct.
So the condominium ownership, I mean, the letters came from a condominium owner, and that person said there were a lot of people who were concerned about this, that it would change the look of the complex from what it is to a new look.
Yes, it will.
That's why we took a vote.
Right.
We actually had a vote.
I have a question about that. Are there instances where perhaps on the north-facing elevations or sides of the buildings where a solution might be to cut the trellis back altogether to make the rake where it naturally is, reducing the overhang altogether significantly?
You mean the eaves?
Yeah,
So no beam.
so no overhang, and you would cut it back. So basically, these 3,
Cutting it off at the roof line.
those 3. May I see that? So, cutting this off altogether
Right.
on the north side of a structure, one of these buildings, might that offer more light into these? Or I'm not sure where the person is who lives in this complex, which side they're facing. If the reason you're going to extend it is because you really do like the shade this provides the condominiums, or is it simply a maintenance issue?
I think I want to answer the question. I believe our proposal is he's cutting all of this off to this point. And where this column exists, he will keep it, but this column doesn't exist on all of them.
Oh, I thought-
But this trellis is coming off on all of them.
I thought they were going to take the trellis off, but put tile over it. Oh, you're not.
No.
No. He's just going to wrap the tile like
Okay.
it is here, and then this thing he
So
was
you'll-
using 8 inches and 30-degree angle. So that little look, and then this middle cap will be placed back over
So
here.
all of the overhangs will be significantly reduced.
On all,
Yeah.
Right.
everywhere, uniformly throughout the complex.
Yeah, exactly. And 3 of them already have those off. Was this picture the one? Or do we have
No,
a picture
this
of
is
that
a
one?
Photoshop thing.
Okay. Yeah, 3 don't have it. Sorry.
I have another question.
Scott, and then let's go on to
In all
comments.
conditions, is there existing tile that is in place that will be
It's
okay?
already there,
That will be
They're right.
exposed at the edge,
but
right,
it's already there. You just don't see it.
It's a roll drape there.
right.
So what, are we cut these off and we're moving this over?
We're cutting this off.
Cutting that.
And that's all.
It would look similar to this.
Right, right.
And
And
as long-
if the column remains, the column will remain.
Correct. And
Because we don't
some,
want to
Most-
the whole thing comes back.
Most of them don't have those columns.
some have it and some don't, but where it exists, they'll keep it. So let's go to comments from the board members in any particular order. Scott, you're first.
I look at a project like this, and I'm picturing it without the trellis. I think, is it an approvable project without the trellis? Is there enough architectural interest and character to approve it? And they're very simple buildings, and the trellis does add some architectural detail. But there is a lot of character in the buildings nonetheless. The roof has a great patina. The landscaping is very mature. I think there's enough interest there that the building can stand on its own without the trellis. And my only concern is the issue where the column exists and you're cutting the the support beam back to a stubby little nose, and that's kind of a difficult condition. I think you need 8 inches, perhaps minimum, of overhang at the column. Just
That's an interesting point. Now, I'm sorry, that's not for me to talk.
It wasn't, but if you can be really brief, what he was talking about was the distance right here.
Yes. These trellis members are attached to the beams with metal brackets right now and lag bolts. So when we just selected 8 inches, it worked out that the angle that we'll cut at to leave 8 inches here just misses on the inside of the. If we were to leave more, we could leave more. That's not a problem. And then we just bond the window. There we go. Then we have those holes or whatever damage is left under there that we could fill. So 8 inches is not set in concrete. We wanted to leave something because we suspect we're going to have damage in the future again from those things being exposed, so we'll end up just nipping back.
and perhaps you need a good copper cap and some epoxy
He did
filling.
say metal cap
We're
on
going
this.
to put a metal cap over it.
So let's go back to comments. Anything
Sorry.
else?
Those are my comments.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
I pretty much agree with Scott. I'm sorry to lose the trellis overhang because it really is part of the character of the development. I do understand that this is a maintenance problem. I wish there was money in the budget to properly maintain it. But I have to agree that the building will still have architectural merit. And I do agree that the distance between the post and the rake at the end of each of those beams will be important. May have to move the post or maybe cut the end of the beam out. And to save yourself this problem in the future, just cap the whole thing. Cap the top, the end, everything. But that would be my comment.
Okay. Great. Any other comments from anybody else?
Yes.
Kit.
By the way, Mr. Miller, I read your letter and I'm really feel the pain of your association. I just spent $100,000 to maintain these trellises here. And personally, to me, I think they are eyesore. They are eyesore now. They are eyesore initially at the new design. I love trellises, but I don't think they do anything. They don't shade anything. They just out there for no reason. So I'm really glad that you finally cut them off and clear them up, and I think we have a much better project at the end.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no other new comments, we can fold this into a motion and move on. And then the question is, it can go to consent, or we can just give the project final right here and now. And if we want to give it final here and now, we can make a couple of notes for staff so that, will they need to pull a construction detail for this demo work?
Well, they can certainly include one. If you would like
the
to.
only comment that I would say is the board is saying we'd like to see a metal cap on there, and so that would be like the only condition that ABR would be put on here is that you basically, whatever wood is left, we protect as best we can. And how we ensure that that happens, I'll let that be a staff
They could return that detail to me.
Because you said you were going to do a metal cap,
They
and
already
so,
said that as
That's
part of
in
their
our-
presentation.
so we just want to hold you to it.
No problem.
So someone want to make a motion, or shall I form one? 1 minute. I would say that the board evaluated the project, and the buildings will have architectural character. Without the trellis, it's sad to see them be lost, but we understand the maintenance issues, and we also understand replacing them is a significant financial burden on the applicant. We ask that the applicant provided detail to staff showing that the beam outrigger to remain have a sheet metal cap installed for further protection, and provide that detail with some dimensions. Actually provide two details, one detail for the condition that has a column and one detail for a condition that doesn't have a column. So that maybe where there isn't a column, you can go more than 8 inches, but if your 8 inches is based upon this bolting of this roof, then it's going to be the same, but at least there'll be two details, where there's a column and where there's not a column.
Got it.
And then, does someone want to make that motion?
Happy.
Okay, and tweak it if you want. Do you have a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by Tit. Any other discussion?
Yeah, under discussion, I would say that we say that has a minimum projection of 8 inches. Yeah.
Okay.
From the post to the lower end of the diagonal.
From the edge of the eave to the higher end of the diagonal.
The top edge.
The top edge of that diagonal.
Are we saying that the edge of the existing fascia where the tile is
Yes.
wrapping around? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, a minimum of 8 inches.
Yeah.
You don't want the rake of the cut to be right tight to the post.
We understand.
You want an
That's
8 inch.
another
You
dimension.
want an 8-inch distance
That's another
there.
dimension I think it should be mentioned also.
Maybe
This
more.
is passed.
So,
You're going to do this.
so staff, we're going to ask for a
8
dimension
inches.
detail,
And go like that.
and we're looking for a minimum of 8 inches
Yeah. inches here
for the
too.
top of the exposed
I think
beam,
this should be the
which means you might have to bond with that existing hole.
That's what I
Right.
And you told me some number, but in case we're asking for a minimum of 8 inches for this point.
Got it.
Understood?
Understood.
Okay, cool. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. And I'll announce a 10-day appeal period. So work with staff on getting them those details, and you're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this in front of us.
You bet.
And if you don't mind, staff wants to keep these photos. We're on to item 3.
Mr. Chair, I have to recuse myself.
All right. Go enjoy dinner. We're going to take a 5-minute recess while the applicant is getting ready. So let's turn off our mics for a moment. We have some comments from the previous meeting. You want to announce who you are, and we'll go through the minutes?
Detlev Piker, Piker Group Architects.
Bill McReynolds, City Ventures.
Courtney Miller with the Office of Katie O'Reilly Rogers.
Great. I'll take that pink slip, thanks. The minutes from the previous were, if you want to go through your presentation, or do you want me to go through the minutes?
I think we can just go ahead and go through the presentation because we actually do try to just address the minutes point by point. So again, just as by way of an introduction into those who may be new to the project here in the audience and on television as well, I want to just kind of say a little bit about the background. This is an affordable housing project. It's going to be ownership affordable to moderate income residents of Santa Barbara and workers in Santa Barbara. Primarily the kinds of workers that may be interested in living in this small development would be workers in the medical industry and in Cox Hospital, that kind of individual. So I want to also just say that, emphasize once again that this is a kind of an infill project on property that is zoned R3, multiple family dwellings, and it's bounded on both sides by apartment buildings that are, I think, respectively 10 units and 6 units. 6 units and 10 units. And then we're proposing 4 units on a good-sized lot, as you can see, that has Mission Creek at the back of it, and the buildings are kind of moved towards the street and maintain a 25-foot setback from the top of the bank of Mission Creek. The overall density with the 4 units on this lot is about 11.76 units per acre, so it's hardly a high-density development. We do have three stories of building in the center of the building that you see in front of there, the 4 units. As you know, the SD2 overlay zone permits 3-story structures within that zone district. However, there's a limitation on any 3-story elements. It's limited to 50% of the ground level area. And our 3-story, 3rd-story elements, which consist of some bedrooms up over the central portion of the building, are less than the 50% prescribed. One other point I'll just kind of reiterate from the last meeting is that we are asking for one modification, and that has to do with the setbacks. And again, in the SD2 overlay zone, there is a setback requirement of 10 feet for 1-story buildings and 15 feet for 2-story buildings. In this instance, I think if you look at the pattern of development on the street, the typical setback for the 2-story apartment buildings on either side and all along all around the area, you have an aerial photo that kind of shows you a little bit of that development pattern, is typically 10 feet. In this instance, we have designed the building, and you can actually see it in this rendering here, such that we cut away an area of a 2nd-story mast to create a deck there. So the only part that's really subject to this particular modification is this little hatched area that you can see on the site plan there. That's the only area that actually moves to the 10-foot development that's consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. So since the last meeting, we have done a little bit of work here. One of the comments that we responded to, first of all, we wanted to create a 3-dimensional view, so you have a rendered view, and you can see we've done a little bit of work with the colors, and I actually have a couple of variants to show you as well when we get to that, that you might consider as we discuss colors. But the main change that we made to the building design itself is adding another material element, and you can see that here with the horizontal siding. which would be a cement fiber type board that clads wraps around the front element, and then we use it again here at these spandrel panels in the center of the building, and then at the other end of the building we also have a wall that utilizes that material. Another thing that we did is we added a little bit of additional overhang to the at the front here, to the second-story roof. I think that adds a nice, kind of a deeper shadow line, et cetera, there. I think that's was a good suggestion, good improvement. Let's see, what else have we done here? With respect to the windows, we understand that you're not happy about using vinyl windows, so we've changed the windows to a fiberglass with pre-finished manufactured color. And then we select our color that we're using in the overall color scheme. And then there was a comment about why we were using some double hung windows, and we've replaced those with casement windows as well. One other comment was a question about what we're doing with HVAC equipment, and we've eliminated that from the plan altogether. We really don't see that we're going to be using air conditioning here at all. So the only other thing before we finish, I wanted to just give Bill McReynolds an opportunity to talk about the photos that he has taken of the neighborhood and presented to you here.
I believe just from the last meeting there was a request for some additional photography. So there's 3 sets. Each team has a.
Oh, they already have them. Okay.
So in terms of the existing 3-story structure in the neighborhood, about 600 feet down, there's 3 pictures there. And then from the 2 adjoining apartments, so I took pictures of the 10-plex building, which you have before you there, kind of what they see existing.
Oh, that's.
And then again on the other side, from the 6-plex apartment building. So they're just in different sets there. And then we had a speaker from Vernon Road. So I'd gone out and taken some pictures from Vernon Road. And then they were generously enough, as I was out there, I actually ran into the owners. And they were generous enough to allow me to take pictures from their balcony also. So those are included also. So hopefully that's, in terms of the context you were looking to add to the discussion.
Wait one sec, let me get the Vernon Road pictures.
You notice a blue Prius is a reoccurring theme in photography.
I do the same thing with my car.
Bill, this is the 6-unit
Yeah, thank you.
apartment next door. Is that correct?
That's the house.
That's the actual subject
the view.
house.
The request for the yes.
From the 6-unit apartment. Okay. What I was hoping to see was the 6-unit apartment rather than the house from the 6-unit apartment. Deeper into the side, but
I apologize.
I still have a couple of things.
Okay. And then that is the front of the.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So it's not 2-story all the way back? Is that right?
No, it is.
It is? Okay. Oh, because it's going back in this.
Somebody's mic's not on, I think.
Okay.
Sorry.
So do you want to finish up?
Finish up, and then we want some landscaping.
Yeah. So with regard to the architecture, I just wanted to say something about the contemporary design style. I think there's a place in Santa Barbara for an opportunity to do a contemporary style building. I think we have some great examples of contemporary buildings in different locations in the city. This is certainly a location where you have a very eclectic mix of buildings, although, further deeper into the neighborhoods, of course, we have, more single-family residences and, more traditional styles. But right on this block and surrounding this building and across from it, we have these multiple-unit apartment buildings that are perhaps not classic examples of modern architecture, but they are certainly, contemporary, simple design style. And so we felt that this is a location where, it's appropriate to consider a contemporary style building, and the particular people that we think are going to be interested in this are going to be younger professionals who are kind of looking for a kind of a fresher, more vital
Can we talk
look.
about the architecture? Want to go over kind of the form,
Sure.
overhangs, colors, and then landscaping, and then let's move on.
Got it. So the form of the building, I think you can see it in the rendering there, and we can move on to the elevations. So you can, So the form of the building is really a series of kind of modulated masses that step up from the street, as you can see, with this exposed balcony at the front here, from the one single story to the second story, and the second story here. In the middle, we have the bedrooms up over. These are carriage-type units, if you will. The garage is on the ground floor with an entry, and then the main living is on the second floor, whereas the main living is on the ground floor at both ends of the building. So then you have this third story. This is a cantilevered section that's cantilevered about 5 feet out over the garage, and then the middle sections are cantilevered about 2 feet, I believe. And then at the back, once again, you have the main living on the ground floor with the bedrooms and the second level, and the mass modulated and steps back down towards the creek. So with respect to colors, we've come up with a couple of different schemes. This is the scheme that's featured on the cover page, and kind of takes that third story mass and uses this kind of darker blue-green color with the siding in a kind of a wood-shaded color with a couple of off-white and kind of a warm gray. And then we look at another scheme that I'll show you here as well, in which, or two other schemes really, one of which is, actually both of these schemes use the same basic color palette, but we kind of move the locations of the colors around a little bit, moving from a darker 3-story portion here to a lighter one over here, and switching to the darker color to the 2-story mass. So those are just a couple of different schemes that you can give us some feedback on what you prefer.
One comment I just want to follow up on the minutes. It said, study extending the depth of the eave elements and provide additional eave elements on particularly the south side and other areas to create additional shade lines and character to the building, or character building elements would be variations to the second and third story roof heights and variations in windows or fenestration.
We didn't get a chance to edit that, so that's why it's a little bit of a run-on sentence.
But if you sort of briefly say that how you went to up. I mean, I can make it up, but I wanted you to sort of say how you went through and you evaluated the massing.
Yeah, I mean, we took the initiative to go ahead and change the roof overhangs at the front and at the back there. But I think it's pretty obvious that the roof heights are kind of modulated here.
Okay.
We didn't see much opportunity without really kind of changing the building to add additional overhangs. Although I guess it's something, if the board feels strongly about it, that we could consider maybe adding something here. So, want to look at the landscape plan?
Sure, it's one back. Okay, so at the last presentation, there were some comments about incorporating fruit trees and espaliers into the project. So I sort of evaluated any possible locations that we could include espaliers on the walls, and we're pretty much limited to here. This is, Daddy did such a good job with, windows and modulating the architecture that's really the only sort of blankish wall that we have available for that. We do have, we will incorporate vines through the project as well. As far as fruit trees, all of these small orange-colored trees have the option of being citrus, and we've listed the improved Meyer lemon for that. And then there was another comment about incorporating oaks throughout the project. All of these smaller symbols are intended to be the 15-gallon saplings that are required by the city as mitigation for removing the small oak that's existing on the property. And then we've also incorporated, the option of including oaks here and here. And the street tree is also an oak. So this tree, which is within the parkway, is required to be an oak. So, I worked with the colors a little bit, and I feel like this feels a lot better than the last plan. We did also change the ramp configuration, so that's a lot cleaner now. And there's a small gate that opens up this way, so it allows for more planting in front of this low courtyard wall. And instead of the switchback that we had before, it's just kind of slow ramp up to the front door, and then they still have a small patio space. The last thing that we changed was to incorporate pedestrian wayfinding through the driveway. And so what we'd like to do is still use concrete, but just have a contrasting color and texture to it. So maybe, a heavy seed, or, some kind of stamp, or just some kind of textural difference that will give it that nice sense of, this is the way to go. So, and tans and browns, the Santa Barbara traditional colors for the concrete.
Okay. Anything else to your presentation?
That's it.
I think that's
it. All right. I will open up public comment. I've got a couple speaker slips. Bill, if we can have them sit there. 2 minutes for speaking. Joe Rashan will be the first person, followed by Pamela Post.
Hi. I'm Joe Rushan. I'm here on behalf of Allied Neighborhoods Association, and we'll get through this quickly as I can. I want to preface by saying we realize that ABR's main function focuses on architecture of individual projects. But short of appealing to the City Council, there's no review body charged with mediating the interests of neighborhoods as they're affected by this project. The neighborhood preservation measures in the new general plan haven't been implemented yet, so we have to look to you to assume that role. You've all we got tonight. The developer's presentation included a common but erroneous assumption. It's an important one that finally needs to be put to rest. In seeking to justify this project, in what has historically been a neighborhood of smaller dwellings, the developer has cited the existence of apartment buildings in the vicinity. He contends that they make the addition of another large building appropriate and acceptable. It's the precedence assumption. That's the assumption that we challenge. Some perspective. The Oak Park neighborhoods were originally developed almost 100 years ago as single-family neighborhoods of low-profile, smaller houses. Then by mid-century, the city government became dominated by real estate interests, and the post-war, post-depression sentiment was old was expendable, anything new and growth generating was good. So the R3 multifamily so-called apartment zoning was adopted and was imposed on many, if not most, of our older neighborhoods. Numerous apartments were built, mostly through the 60s and early 70s, but hardly any since. Nevertheless, the old zoning endures, making proposals like this a possibility. Developers seeking to take advantage of this zoning cite the existence of apartment buildings that pepper the neighborhoods, implying that they have supplanted the dominant theme. That's a gross misrepresentation. These apartments built back then did not transform the main theme of the old neighborhoods. They were adulterations of them. And the erroneous assumption is that we are to justify, on the basis of those adulterations, further adulteration. Anyone familiar with that area knows that the predominant character of the Oak Park neighborhoods is still older, smaller residences. Its history is still readily apparent. And that the apartments have not changed that character so much as represent a visual incongruous intrusion. And now we certainly don't need a third-story precedent. I realize the owner has a right to seek to develop his property, his or her property, more profitably. But by the same token, there is no unfettered right to the maxing out of the zoning. In this case, shoehorning 4 units into a skinny lot that for the last 98 years has been occupied by a single little bungalow, and building a third story in order to accomplish it. That's exploitation at the expense of the neighborhood. and it's something we are intent on preventing with your help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Pamela Post, followed by Thomas Lambert.
Hello, I'm Pamela Post. Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I live at 2607 Arroyo Street, which is just a block from the project parcel. And I would like to sort of reiterate what the previous speaker had said in regard to density and the fact that Oak Park neighborhood is primarily and has been traditionally for many years, primarily single-family homes or smaller apartments. My concern is also with the third story, but also in regard to the architectural style. Even though the apartments along Alomar, which were built primarily in the post-war period between roughly 1945-50 and into the 60s, and I would call at best sort of speculative commercial development with actually no particular style, other than they're very minimalist. I think the architectural style should be more in keeping with what is traditionally the architectural style of the Oak Park neighborhood, which is mostly vernacular and craftsman and also period, sprinkling of period revival. So I would like to see some study of the architectural style as well as the sort of the scale, bulk, and massing of of the units.
Thank you very much. Thomas Lambert. And the last speaker will be Nora Gallagher.
Hello again.
Hello,
hello. One of the things I'd like to bring up is what are they going to do with the rear of the property, which is unbuildable, the other 100 feet? Are they going to restore the riparian
We'll ask
habitat?
that question for you. We'll find out.
Okay. And I oppose the setback encroachment in the front. I mean, if this monster doesn't fit, it just doesn't fit. 5 feet isn't going to make it fit. And who's going to buy a condo, when you're having your coffee and looking out at some guy walking by your window 4 feet away or whatever. And like these two people said, it's just too tall. I mean, if you look at the pictures, these don't really show you that this building is 13 feet 3.5 inches taller than this building next door or this building next door. You're just wiping out views completely across town from Vernon Road forever. And another thing, when I was walking my golden retriever the other day, and I'm on my second one, is, you had a picture up there and you showed the people standing sort of across Alomar on that corner. One of the things I noticed in the afternoon the other day that, the people that own those 3 or 4 houses on the corner, their light is going to be blocked out perpetually every day of their lives about 2 hours earlier in the afternoon, forever, because of the monstrous height of this building. So it's not just, how you draw your little solar thing on the side. No, it's just only going to barely shade the driveway or whatever. And, another thing was that if you look at the apartment building next door and you're looking out your window and you can see the mountains, you'll never see the mountains again from 246 Alomar on that deck. And then you keep referring to the creek setback as this top of the bank. Well, there wasn't any bank there when the D9s came through there, or D8s came through there, 2 of them, and tore all the riprap out in the 95 flood. They made a berm there because they were losing that property. If you go out there and you look at the neighboring buildings, the water level was up to the second story balcony.
So, everybody can say it's not in a floodplain, it's not this, it's not that. I was going to bring an article that I forgot that was Dr. Keller wrote in the news press a couple weeks ago about, how a 100-year flood or a 500-year flood could actually be every 2 years or every 5 years or every, once or twice a decade. And I don't think that's being addressed here. Just the flooding problems. The other thing, you guys were going to do the driveway in pretty much all concrete, but that doesn't let anything soak in. So I'm thinking that maybe that's just complete runoff, maybe permeable brick or something that actually lets some of the water back down into the site.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Norma Gallagher. And if there's any other speakers, I'll need a speaker slip.
Good afternoon. I'm Nora Gallagher. I live at 2510 Aurelia Street, which is about 2 blocks from the project. I also represent the Oak Park Neighborhood Association, which is about 75 families in the neighborhood. We want to say, first of all, that we're not opposed to condominiums in our neighborhood per se. Obviously, there are some larger buildings in the neighborhood, some multifamily buildings. This is part of the diversity of the neighborhood. But we are interested in looking at a measured, diverse approach that takes the whole neighborhood into consideration. And there are many problems with this project, as far as we can tell. One is, of course, the cottage is over 50 years old, and we want to make sure that it's cleared in historic structure evaluation. Second, size, bulk, scale. I understand there was a comment made that the building was approximately twice the appropriate size based upon the usable lot size. This was at the previous meeting. There are no buildings of 3 stories in the neighborhood except those right around Cottage Hospital. I noticed that there were some buildings that were flashed up on the screen. I don't know where they were. Anyway, I walked around and looked around, and there are no 3-story buildings except right near Cottage. So it sets a precedent that is kind of astonishing for the neighborhood. I understand the 3-story sections of the building estimated 32 feet high, along with heating and air conditioning on the roof. We would need to see story poles that actually reflect the actual height of these buildings. We've seen estimates before, and they haven't quite worked out, so we're hoping that you can do that for us. I think the setbacks are, the modifications that you've been asked to do in order to restore the creek area is going to put the building right up against the sidewalk. As you know from looking at Oak Park, most of our houses are set back. We have porches, we have trees, we have little gardens in the front of our houses. So this is a great difference from the usual style of the streetscape. It's been said before, it's not in keeping with the style of the neighborhood. I'm not against modern architecture at all. I come from a family of architects, but this doesn't look very interesting to me. It doesn't seem to add to the neighborhood. I'd be much more interested in other styles and hopefully more imagination. There's very little open space on this plan. I know that you've noted that. I'd like to underline that. Again, most of us have backyards. Even those of us who have condominiums behind us have a backyard and then a little more space and then an alleyway. If you drive around the neighborhood, you see that, in fact, this whole idea of an urban forest is really quite predominant in this area and would be, again, we would welcome much more open space. So I think that's really about it. Thanks for your time and attention.
Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for all the speakers. Are there any other public speakers? Staff, is there anything else that you
I just have one comment. Today, this set of drawings the applicant just brought to the table because they were continued 2 weeks. But I took the first concept landscape plan to the SFDB member, Lisa James, for a courtesy review to get her comments. And she just commented that it was an excellent design. She liked it very much in the choice of plants.
Okay.
But staff will be looking for at least some minimal acceptable landscaping in the private outdoor areas for each unit. At least something. Remember, we discussed that on a similar project, 213 West Dakota.
Dakota Street.
That there should be at least something proposed in case the owner doesn't do anything at all, that at least something acceptable is in those areas.
Okay. I actually had a couple questions for staff and then for the applicant, and then we'll go to the general board. Can you, staff, touch base on the historic structures? Has there been a report that was done and this has been cleared for demo? The existing structure that's on the property? And if you don't have an answer, I'll ask the applicant.
Well, the case planner, Peggy's here. I don't know if she has anything to add, but there is a tag on the parcel in our computer database that our former historian, Jake Jacobus, reviewed it and said it was didn't have any historic merit.
Okay, that's an answer. And then another question having to do about the creek setback and all that, is similar to the Coda Street project, where we're not going to get into an arm wrestling match about the creek setbacks, but has that been reviewed by creeks, or do we have any feedback, or not at this point?
I don't know if the applicants did anything after the last meeting here or not.
We provided a PRT submittal to the city on the 13th.
Okay.
And then we also provided a biological, archaeological, and geological assessment of the setback. I believe that they're going to be visiting the site on Thursday, so we haven't received comments back yet on that, but we did provide all the requested reports.
So today we'll review what's in front of us, which is the project.
It does meet the municipal code, is my...
Great. And then I assume the solar setback and all that stuff works. Has that been noted on an elevation somewhere?
Right there. Right here.
So this is the driveway, this is two-story, and that's a two-story. Okay. Questions from the board to the applicant? In any particular order?
I have several questions. Go ahead.
I was just wondering.
Okay.
Could you show where the private outdoor living spaces are?
Sure.
Put your mic off the mute button.
It's on.
Okay. Let's see if the phone rings one more time.
So, unit number 1 has a private little patio in the front yard there, but also a side yard of 6 feet. But primarily the larger outdoor living space is on the second floor in this deck here. Same thing applies to unit 4. So you have the 6-foot side yard, and then you have a substantial deck on the second story. For these units, you have an enlarged ground level space that's 10 feet. It looks like about 12 feet or so, as well as a portion of it being the 6-foot side yard setback there as well.
So the private outdoor living space is in conjunction with the garage and the stairwell.
There's, let's go to the floor.
That's in the middle units.
Yes.
In addition to the deck space.
In addition to, the middle units also have a balcony overlooking the driveway. Yes, right.
Private outdoor living. Okay.
Correct.
All right, that's his question.
For me,
Kirk, you're up.
I noticed on the rendering, it looks like in addition to the siding, you've got a kind of a plaster detail at the window. I'm just curious what that's going to look like. It didn't look like it was differentiated yet on the plan, but is it a pop out or a recess or just a change in material?
Yeah, just a change in material. There'll be a little bit of a recess there. It doesn't really show up in the plans because it hasn't been detailed to that level yet. But the idea is that this window and the structure around it is meant to be sort of a differentiated piece that sits within that plane, basically. That's the idea behind it.
And then I think last time you pointed out that the eaves are plaster and there's a metal fascia.
Yes.
And the underside, it looks like you're proposing would be that light lime color, or what do you have?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of still debating that, but yes, that would be, the idea is that it would be a lighter color on the underside there.
Okay. And then this looks like another color.
This would
again.
be this.
Oh, it's the lime.
Yeah.
Okay. And the garage door is painted the same.
Yeah.
And then also it looks like, except, or maybe in addition to, there's some kind of recess there at the windows. Is that a plaster return with the window recessed?
Right. The windows will be recessed. The walls are 2x6, so it gives us the opportunity by pushing the window right in the inside there that we can have the plaster return and get a sense of a recess there.
And how would that work where there's siding there? Would that
In
be something
those
different?
cases, we're going to have very thin kind of trim piece that surrounds those windows as well as the corners.
Okay. I was just one of my comments last time was my concern was about the impacts on both sides to the current residents of the apartment buildings. This, because of the driveway on that side and lots of differentiation in the articulation in the architecture, I think is working fine. On this side, I still have a concern, and what I was just noticing is, this is a question, is that there's a stairwell, I think it's going from the second to the third floor in here, and that means that perhaps there could be a break in that third-story roof in a couple locations. I think there's another one happening here. So I'm just wondering if there's some reason that we can't do that, and then also is there a reason why we couldn't do, like, say, a projected eave on this or some of these two-story areas to get more happening on that side?
I think those are things that we could look at for sure.
All right. I think those are my questions. Thanks.
All right. Who wants to jump in next? Gary. No, we are still in questions, and then before we go into comments, I got a couple things to add.
A couple of questions. One, the plate height thought. What are the plate heights of the first, second?
9, 9, and 8.
So 9, 9, and 8. Okay, and then in the front yard setback, how much is that of that front eave is closer than the 10 feet? How big is that eave?
You mean that little projection that comes out? I believe
it's not grounded, right? It's just
it's just a projection coming up from the wall. I believe it's 3 feet.
That's a 3-foot projection.
I believe so.
And that is not included in the modification.
No, because that's an
It's
allowable.
not. I noticed it's not in that hatched area.
No, it's not it's an allowable. You're allowed to have projections of eaves into the setback.
Okay.
So on the first floor, Gary, it's 3 foot 2 inches, if I'm getting this right, and then on the second floor, it's 2 foot 7.
All right. Then there was a member of the public. They were asking about restoration. Are we going to be restoring any of the existing creek bank on this project?
Our goal is to maintain the creek. Obviously, we haven't received comments back from the creeks folks yet, but our intent is not to enter within the 25-foot setback at this point, beyond the
Top of
The
bank.
removal of invasives.
the removal of invasives and the
Installation of
installation
native
of
plant material.
the other material.
So we're just removing all the non-natives, and we'll reestablish that whole area with 100% native plant material. But beyond the top of bank, we're not planning on touching anything.
Okay. And the common outdoor area, where is the common outdoor area in this project?
Is there one?
Is there any?
No.
There is none. Okay.
The creek.
And was there was some discussion about permeable pavers? Is there permeable pavers in this project?
We are proposing a dry well. So there is very good infiltration here, about 11.5 inches per hour, and groundwater is at 25 feet. So we'll be using a dry well. So all of the water will move towards the dry well location and then permeate back into the ground.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Stephanie and then Tip, are you ready?
Chef,
Go ahead,
I
Chip.
have to leave, so should I make some
I'm
comments?
sorry, yes, go. He already told me to leave. You go first.
Oh, comments now?
You do everything, because you have to leave at 5.
Okay, first of all, I find the design acceptable. I think the massing is workable for me in terms of 2-story in front and 3-story in the middle. I do find there's some issue with some of the windows placement in the back. It seemed to be a little random the way it was laid out, even though it was they were related to other spaces on the inside. But maybe some additional study for the windows. They all don't look the same sizes, and they may be a little more interesting because the massing is quite interesting, but all the windows seem the same. You have a 3-story or 2-story. And I find the color, the green option, seem to work. It's probably play down the 3-story massing. And I do agree with Kurt that maybe something can be done on the 3rd-story element back here to bring it down a little bit to add some more interest to the south elevation, right? So it will be more successful. So it can relate more to the north elevation. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, he's going to take off. Stephanie, you're up. I really don't have any questions because I got to ask first. The comments that I wanted to make for the board, when we make our comments, the first thing we should look is the big broad brush. Are we okay with vernacular? And we heard Tip's comments. And are we okay with the size, bulk, and scale? And then from that point, we'll have a discussion. But I want people to touch base, just like Tip said, he's fine with the massing, some articulation on the south side, south elevation, and colors and things. So if people can start with the broad brush, and then we'll talk about other details.
Well, I can do that. First, that the use of the horizontal wood siding warms up the project a lot. It's very nice. Secondly, the landscaping is very good. It's a big improvement. I agree with comments about making the south elevation more interesting. This can be done by recessing openings as well as projecting eaves or projecting elements. The north elevation, which if it were facing the other way, would be a very good south elevation because of the recesses in the building that create shading and protect the building from sun exposure, sun. But something like that could be applied to the south elevation. Broad stroke is that the site is about 15,000 square feet. 1/3 of the site is unbuildable because it is a creek, leaving 10,000 square feet or 2/3 of the site area. If you do the math, the density of the buildable area is actually around 18 units per square foot. And the transition from what it is now in the neighborhood to 18 units per acre is a very abrupt transition. And I think there's just 1 unit too many on this project. You would have room for more private outdoor living space. You would have room for some common area. If you could just make this calm it down a little bit. It's a real pile, and that does not mean that I don't like the architecture. It's a real pile of building. One thing is, a word that comes to my mind is playfulness. I don't see any playfulness here, and I know that Daddy is a very playful guy. And so a curvilinear path, as opposed to straight rectilinear paths throughout, if you had a little kind of a path that would wander through the paving area, and again, the nice contrast in materials is appreciated, would give this something of a maybe more organic or kind of a natural feel to it. The trees do that. They modulate a little bit. They have a kind of nice flow. But that would be one comment that I had. And I really do think that there's an opportunity for having some more usable private outdoor living space in conjunction with this great resource in the back, which is the creek. So those are my broad stroke comments.
Thank you. Next, anybody?
All right.
Gary.
I reviewed this project online. I just want to say that was not here for this project last time.
Thanks for saying that.
But I do find the size, bulk, and scale of this project to be a bit large. Well, quite a bit large. The modification that they're asking for is an indication of that. The fact that we've got projections extending past that into the modification also exacerbates the feeling of it being farther into the setback. When you walk by it and the eave is projecting out, it feels more like the building is in your face. The fact that they're 9-foot plate line in the second floor and portions of the third floor, it looks like, also increases heights. So I think there's room for reduction on this. I really don't like the idea of having a complex that has no common outdoor living space. I think that it should have some. And I think that the architectural style is compatible with the neighborhood. And unlike Howard, I believe that there is a lot of playfulness in it. There's a lot of except for the south elevation, certainly the north elevation has a lot of undulation and lots of different geometries to it. So I think this particular building has a lot of playfulness to it. I think the fenestration can be studied a little bit more, particularly the south elevation. I think Kirk is right about having some shadow lines on there over the windows and so forth. But the main thing, I would like to see something that's going to tell us what's going to happen in the creek area, whether we're going to on the plans, what type of restoration is going to happen. And I'm sure once it goes through the Creek Commission, that's going to happen. But mostly, I'd like to say that size, bulk, and scale, it's not there for me, and I almost feel like it's one unit. I'm with Howard, where I think it's one unit too much.
Thank you. Stephanie, you ready? Kirk, either one of you jump in?
Hi, Kirk.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I appreciate the restudy and the additional elements, both with the eaves and the siding, and greater attention to window detail and color that you made since the last review, and also the changes to the landscape plan. And the broadest brushstroke, I think, in my view, saying that, well, they can't build on Mission Creek, and there's this huge area on the site that's non-buildable, and therefore it should be discounted. To me, that seems completely inappropriate. This is a large site, which includes a wonderful creek and landscape area that remains untouched. I mean, that's part of this project. It's not separate from this project. It's not something we subtract from it. It's part of it. So I think that's a real plus about this project rather than a minus. And I think I've already made the comments clear about the south elevation, that I think there's room there still because it is the closest part of the project to the setback on that south side. It's going to have the greatest impact to the existing apartment building there, that wherever roof heights can be reduced or eaves can be added or more articulation can be added, I think would be good and still needs to be looked at on that side. I think the rectilinear pathway to the back, I think it goes well with the architectural design, and I wouldn't change that. I also agree with Gary that the architectural style seems to me compatible with the neighborhood. And one of the reasons that I wanted to see more photographs was because I wanted to have a clearer idea of what those sides of those apartment buildings are. And basically, they're two-story uniform roof lines that go all the way back with repetitive windows or uniform balcony. Very unarticulated and uninteresting and old and dated and unremodeled. So I think this is going to be a very nice improvement to a kind of a similar use that we see right adjacent. And I just wanted to also point out that because we had public comment to the contrary, that this is, as was presented, this is 600 feet away at the corner of Talon Road and Alomar, and you have three-story facades that are, just visible from the street, directly visible from the street. This looks like it's maybe 15 feet back, and that's a three-story wall going straight up, unarticulated. So this is not setting a precedent. There are precedents already in the neighborhood. So I think, the way that it's been carefully designed, I'm also, in regards to the modification, I'm completely in favor of the modification. I think it's clear that we have, on both sides of this property, we have two-story flat facades, apartment buildings that go up, that are 10 feet away from the property line. And this has a much more modest second-story element that's very nicely detailed at the second floor. So to me, the modification is completely appropriate. Just as a general comment, this is more of a detail thing. From the rendering, it looks like the base of the building is a darker color, and I think that, to me, that works well as a kind of underlying base for the building. And so, and I think also that the eaves, perhaps, should be a darker color rather than a lighter color. And I'm just something to throw out there and maybe look at.
That's a different.
Those are my comments.
Stephanie, broad brush.
Broad brush is that I'm kind of agreeing with Kirk in that the way this building steps up from the street, it goes a long way to kind of camouflage its height and then mass, bulk, and scale. And looking in site plan, it really fits almost similar to the buildings on each side of it in a similar way, and gives and within its own property line. There's enough space around it to make it a comfortable siting of this building. For me, I appreciate the use of the siding along the front facade, and would agree with Kirk on the colors. I really love the green color, and I did not like the other colors proposed. I think it's very much in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, and would encourage the applicant to look for more ways to incorporate craftsman details or these sorts of details into the building to warm it up, with perhaps some texture on the eaves. Kirk was saying a color on the underside of the eaves, but perhaps a texture as well. That's it.
The one thing about the size, bulk, and scale that bothers me the most, and it's just more of a visual thing, is trying to understand what this 5-foot cantilever is going to be like when it's 2 stories up. And I'm looking at the table length, and I'm looking at our length here, and this is about 42 inches between me and you. And maybe it's 4 feet, 48 inches. A 5-foot cantilever, and then it's the second and third floor going straight up, and it just seems to me too tall of a mass on top of the garage. And I looked at the photograph of this other 3-story, or wherever it was, and it seemed, and I'm not sure what this overhang is, whether this overhang and the shadow being cast is more like a 2-foot overhang versus a 5-foot overhang. So that's where I'm starting with size, bulk, and scale visually, and that's, I'm trying to relate to this comment here that I'm thinking that this sticks out too much. And it's staring at the floor plan, what this zone is, that's this 5 feet, is just extra living space, and you've got a kitchen here, and this is a modest, affordable housing project. You've got the dining room here. There's room that this square footage isn't required to make the house work. It isn't like it's the extra bedroom or the closet for the bedroom.
Bedrooms up above, though.
Exactly. So I'm saying this doesn't need to be here, and that's going to alleviate a lot of that looming mass. Because, yeah, it's 9 feet up, but it's taken 5 feet out from the ground. And then the coloring of the thing, thank goodness it's not black anymore. But still, the green here is still, I mean, that's a nicer green than this, but the Lego block that's plopped there seems very heavy. And visually, size, bulk, and scale, from my perspective of viewing it as an architect, it's not working. So this area, I mean, everyone's commenting about the architecture and the playfulness. On the upper floor, what I'm sensing, I know you're trying to do your demising walls, but goodness gracious, if that could just rotate over here, and then you could have a little bit more relief. I'm just sensing that it's overhanging too strong. The other thing I sense, and it has to do about the architectural character. I see this as kind of a modified Frank Lloyd Wright-ish kind of stuff, or it's got a certain look. This has a certain look, and they're not the same. And so Kurt keeps on mentioning add more overhangs and try to bring some of this character and articulation somewhere else. But somehow this is too boxy, blocky, Irving Gill here, and then this is Frank Lloyd Wright horizontal with overhangs. And it's like this was an addition to this structure. So that's my point coming from size, bulk, and scale, is that it's still too, it appears large on the site. The character of the architecture, as long as it was homogeneous and had a flavor, because you've got the 1950s modern, you know, whatever they call it these days, you have a choice, but these two are separate from tying it together. That's visually just how I perceive it. So architectural style and size, bulk, and scale, I'm not seeing it yet. The third story element is not a problem as long as the massing can get rotated or lessened, but that overhang is bothersome. So at that point, how do we proceed, and where would you like to go next?
I think at this point we will probably have an indefinite continuance because we have we're going to get feedback on the PRT, and then we may go forward to the zoning administrator hearing with your comments, and so then when we come back, we'll have refinements to and kind of incorporate some of the ideas that you brought up.
So what we can do, I asked for comments broad brush, if we can just quickly go through and comment about the requested modification so we can have that in the minutes so he can go on to the staff hearing officer about this one element. I'll add my comment that visually we're supposed to look at the aesthetic impacts. Because there's a negative space here, this encroachment over here, I want to say basically balances, plus the way that architecture works with the horizontals. I'm not losing sleep over the aesthetics of this requested modification, and it's because of the negative space that's next to it. But if other people want to chime in, and then we can add that to the motion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. You know, for projects that go on for a land use approval at Planning Commission or Staff Hearing Officer, we ask you to do the project compatibility analysis in the minutes.
Well, I don't think we're ready for that at this point.
I don't think so either.
So then you won't be able to go on to the Staff Hearing Officer to address this issue until after you get your creek and your dirt taken care of. Comments. So scratch all that unless you, and for the record, if people want to just comment on what they feel for the requested mod, Kirk already has and he's in favor of it. Correct?
Yes.
I'm in favor of mod.
Okay.
I'm not in favor of mod. I think it is too close, and I think that with ease, as I said before, with the ease, I think it's just too close in the outdoor living space. I think it's too close to the front.
I don't think there's a need for the mod.
Okay, perfect. So now, how would, oops.
I'm just going to say 3-2.
We don't need to take a straw vote. We just, you have the feeling of the board. So if we can tidy this up and just make it an indefinite continuance with the comments from the board. And
that's appropriate.
Yes.
We'll come back with
Mr. Chair, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it would be helpful to the architect if he had better sense of the consensus of the board regarding the cantilevers. If he's not able to do those cantilevers, then that would make a big difference.
I'm the only person who commented on the cantilevers. Do other people, hearing now what I said about a 5-foot cantilever that's going up 2 stories, are they concerned by it, or just, I mean, Tip's not here to comment anymore, but how do other people feel about this condition? Am I the only one with that concern?
You're not the only one.
Okay.
I have to say, with this style of architecture, if it was a different style of architecture, I would have a problem with that cantilever. But given the proposed style of this architecture and the geometry of it, I am okay with the 5-foot overhang.
And I'm okay with it. Also, for that reason, it is taller than perhaps this picture.
Because it's a 9-foot
different
plate on the
proportion than what is shown here. And so it's not going to be as imposing as you might think. And it's got all the relief of the motor court from.
I don't have a problem with cantilever either. So. I just want to add one other thing, because I really appreciate, what's your name again? Paul's comment, that if just even some modest addition, little pop-out eaves or something was added to help tie these two together, I think that would really help.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Yep.
So who would like to formulate a motion?
Could I get an idea of how the board, a straw vote on how they are on the size Vulcan scale? Because I think there's a number of us on board that still feel the project is large.
What did Tip say?
Tip is fine with it, so I'm just going to say it's a 3-3.
3-3. Yeah.
So we're split down the middle. Unless you want a formal straw vote.
I think it's fair to say that some members of the board feel that the overhang is okay and some are not, but it's a divided board.
It's a divided board. On the overhang, there's less people concerned by it, but size, Vulcan scale.
I think your comments about the style, the fact that there are 2 different styles playing with each other there, I don't know whether that is a good thing or whether it's because of that it's eclectic, or whether it should be made one or the other. I mean, but the comment is valid.
I think it is, and I think the discussion that they had right there with adding it is a good comment. I agree with your comment on that, Paul. I didn't see it, but thanks for pointing that out. I think what we really need to concentrate on, though, is the big picture, and the big picture is the size, bulk, and scale of the building. And 3-3, it means to me that it's not there yet.
I would say some board members have a concern about the size, bulk, and scale. And leave it as some, but in reality, it's a 50-50 split. Are you taking down notes for a minute, a motion, or no?
I made some notes. I could make a motion. I thought we were just sending them on.
We need to have something for the record, so there's a paper trail of what we just talked about.
Okay. All right. So let's start where we just ended. Is some board members still have issues with the size, bulk, and scale of the project. Other members are fine with the proposed design and
Density.
density. In general, the board members feel that the architectural style is appropriate, but would like to see some further study to some areas. In particular, the south elevation, where eave elements or roof height changes could be made. And also on the rear portions of the building that face the street, or are interior to the project, where eave elements or other design elements could be added to tie the architecture in the back to the front facade in a better way. Some board members felt more study could be given to the window sizes and types to provide more variation. Anything to that?
Colors are good.
Yeah, in general.
It's really early at this point, but
yeah, I think it's pretty clear that most of us like the main rendering you showed on the drawings, as submitted with the drawings.
I don't want to really commit ourselves to colors this early.
Yeah.
Well, you could say they're in the right direction, or that you appreciate them.
Yeah, the colors shown in the rendering on the front sheet of the plans are moving in the right direction. And the landscape plan also should eventually include creek restoration notes and details.
All right, is there someone who wants to second that?
Oh, oops. Just one last thing. Did we say that the board was split on feeling that the modification was appropriate, or was it 3-2? Was it 3-2?
Tip hasn't weighed in on that.
Okay, well, but the board members present most felt that the modification was supportable.
Yeah, at least one board member was not in favor of the modification. I prefer that be on there.
Let's take two.
No, it was 3 who were against.
3 to 2 against.
3 to 2 against it.
You're against the mod?
No, I was for it. I thought you were against it.
No, I
Okay.
can support it because of the negative space that was here.
Okay.
So there's
Okay. So it's 3 for it and 2 against.
in support.
Okay.
The maker of the motion, this goes to you, is that the applicant should study maybe a little more direct use of private outdoor living space somehow. That does. The private outdoor living space for the middle units really is not. There's really nothing there.
Mm-hmm. And there was a reason for that in the landscape plan, I imagine, because it is their space for them to develop as the user wants. So there are trees shown.
Yeah.
But for Tony, he said that they need to show minimal acceptable landscape in a private yard, just like we asked for in that other project downtown.
I'm just thinking of the people living there. They can't walk out into a yard. They have to go downstairs.
Well, Oak Park is really nearby.
Well, I don't care what Oak Park is like. I mean, Oak Park is actually the ability to walk out on your yard.
You're saying that this 6-foot area is not a significantly large enough spot for them to basically...
No, the private outdoor space down there in units 2 and 3, in the middle units, those are on the same level as a garage and a staircase. There's no living space in connection with those outdoor living space.
So you're saying there should be some outdoor living space on the same level as the living areas.
And I think the reason for that is that there are just too many units on the site. That's related to the size, bulk, and scale issue.
Yeah, we could add that one board member felt that the outdoor living space.
No, I
Are there
felt
others?
I felt that there should be common space as well, but I felt that the outdoor living space was minimal.
Look
And I
for
won't
opportunities to
specify.
find more
I won't
out-
specify whether it's common or.
See, in my
otherwise.
view, we've got Mission Creek and we've got the huge area, open area. So to me, to say add more open area for the units themselves doesn't seem appropriate. So that's why I want to differentiate. Some board members feel that.
Well, we're having a good discussion here in the sense that Howard's point of view is that this space here that's 10 by 10 is not really part of the everyday living space. Where this space over here, it's off the kitchen and you can actually, do stuff on this outdoor space. Where here, yes, they provided that statistically it meets the requirement, where if they had more of an outdoor space here or even on the third floor that was related to some living area, then they would go out there and use that balcony more readily than having this space that's just going to be basically, store your bikes and trash in the back.
It's a dog run.
And so that's where his concerns were coming from when he's studying this. He's going, if I own this unit, I wouldn't be using this space that much.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can just say, look for opportunities to provide more outdoor living space connected to the homes, to the living areas of the home.
All right.
Okay. Any other discussions on the motions? I have one minor disclaimer. Everything was fine with it. I'm just not okay with the color that's shown on this rendering because it seems too heavy and too dark.
Well, this is the color.
I know it is, and that's even lighter, it seems.
This seems pretty close to that.
No, this is a lot darker.
No, this seems pretty close to that,
different
too.
printers. This is the actual color that we're proposing.
Yeah,
so.
good.
And I think that's pretty close.
That's pretty close.
Is that still a problem?
I'm just, it's the heaviness, but we'll go on.
All right, we'll have more opportunity to get into color as we go down the road. So.
Any other discussion on the motion? We'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
We had a motion.
Thank you.
We had a motion.
We had a motion, and we're moving on indefinitely.
Very good material here.
You can do that.
Back up. Back up. Who was the seconder?
I was a seconder.
All right. Thank you.
And that'll
Those are
return back to the
extras.
full board of the APR.
One more time?
That will return to the full board of the APR.
Indefinite continuance. All right, we'll sign off for tonight. Thank you very much.